With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Kind of like choosing Derek Jeter as the pinch hitter for your baseball team.
Jeter, you're in. We need a home run.
I'll give it a try. I've swung a bat once or twice.
That's out of here.
Yep, even easier than that. With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Kind of like choosing Derek Jeter as the pinch hitter for your baseball team.
Jeter, you're in. We need a home run.
I'll give it a try. I've swung a bat once or twice.
That's out of here.
Yep, even easier than that. With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
Of that 55 billion from the total domestic financing. So at a point where, of course, the markets had closed, the government couldn't borrow. And like I said, we've had even been borrowing in the past, and you don't really see the catalytic effect of these borrowings on improving the economic fortune. So when everybody pulled back, then somebody has to step in to finance the gap. But the issue, I guess, many of us or people had raised really is that if you came in July and you said that you need a gap of about 39, so let's say 40 billion roughly, how come that number jumps to now 65 billion, and to the point that your central bank is financing almost about, 70% or so of that figure there? That the central bank itself, if you read its act and its mandate, it's very clear that they cannot lend to the government more than 5% of the previous year's revenue. This is in the law. They broke the central bank actually broke its own law. And the central bank, the act that sets it up, Act 612, even further says that if you want to go beyond this, go to Parliament and also engage the so the minister shall let me just read section 16.7, where the total advance of loans, purchase of treasury bills and securities made under one is 5% of the previous year's total revenue. The governor shall notify the minister and Parliament of the attainment of the limit, right? And of course, the minister upon this shall put a report to Parliament of the remedial measures that are meant to be taken. There's been a lot of debate about this, and from where I sit, I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem as though that was strictly followed to the latter. And that's, again, a problem that we need to take into account. So what I've done so far is to take you through the genesis of our economic history, but not focusing on just the current issues, but to show you that we've had a problem going all the way back to the maybe 12 years. You can even extend the data. And the problem largely lies in the politics, which is manifesting itself in the economics. So the economic challenges that we are having is a manifestation of a bigger problem, and the problem is the politics. So the question is, how do we fix the politics? So we've got the IMF program, and of course, we went to the IMF in a crisis. And when you are sick and you go to the hospital in an ambulance in an emergency, they have to provide emergency measures, right? They have to stabilize you first, and then maybe move you from ICU into the ward, and now start thinking about what to do next. And that's really what we ended up with. But like the IMF itself says, that there were pre-existing fiscal and debt vulnerabilities, largely driven by the political cycle in itself. And then I talked about the fact that if you look at our tax and spend, and this is a very important chart here, because today, when I came, I went to get a haircut, and I was having a conversation with the barber there about how they are feeling broadly, and I think he made a very interesting remark. He's 34 years old. He finished school somewhere in the northern part of the country and is in Accra, doing whatever. Completed secondary school, but very sharp, very bright person. And he made a remark in the tree language, to the point that we have been borrowing, but we don't see the effect. In fact, he's indicated that for him, he doesn't even see what the government has done for him personally. And this was just about an hour and a half or so ago when I stepped out. And that, I think, struck with me. But also you can see part of that narrative in the chart that I have here on your left-hand side, right? So here, what I do is you look at the change in our public debt and you look at the change in our GDP. And what is quite stark here is that the two are going in opposite directions, right? So we're borrowing. The debt is there, but the debt is not necessarily impacting our growth. So you ask yourself, so where's the money? Yeah. Some of it is paying interest. So some of the past debt that we had borrowed, and some of those past debt were also not really used for the productive ventures that it should have been used for, right? So even talking haircuts and all of this and second round, I think for us as citizens, we need to be perhaps even much more harder on the government. Because here you are asking us to forego certain interests and certain benefits. But like the barber that I met and interacted with just an hour and a half ago, he doesn't feel, he doesn't see, he doesn't experience, what you may call the social contract, right? So he's just there doing his own thing. But as far as they are concerned, government is something that is far removed, right, from them. But of course, if the economy tanks and inflation tanks, like we're seeing, and with prices going up, they have to spend more money to buy their goods and to buy services in that regard. Okay, so we're debt distressed. We are restructuring our debt. I want to quickly talk on the external debt. So now I'm moving into solutions and what we can do to improve that load. And this, I've classified them into about three sort of buckets. So options and measures around our tax and spend policies. I'll talk on the external debt, and then I'll also talk about some of the expenditure reforms that are linked to the political economy that we need to address. In a lot of the conversation that we have heard, a lot of reference is made between Ghana and Zambia, and the need to look at Zambia's recent debt deal as a potential template when it comes to restructuring our external debt. In fact, even in Zambia's case, they did not restructure their domestic debt. They just said, no. So they're only dealing with the external creditors. But what they've agreed, the 6.3 billion of relief that they've agreed with external creditors, is really interesting on two or three fronts. The first thing is that, like Ghana's case, their debt to GDP doesn't decline sharply overnight. However, they've been giving some grace period, right, on their principal repayment. I think it's 3 years. And then also the interest rates have been brought down. And then there's also a conditional clause there that says that in the event that the Zambian economy starts outperforming, so it starts growing beyond like 4%, then they have to pay back more, right? This is one of the new things that is being incorporated in that. And I think it's a good template that Ghana could use in terms of pushing for savings on the external debt. And what I mean by this is that if you actually work out the debt profile and you look at the numbers very carefully, if we are able to negotiate hard on the external front, there will be no need for a second round of domestic debt exchange. It's very clear. So on the financing side, if you look at the IMF's own numbers, between now and 2026, we need to raise about 15 billion of financing dollars, right? Out of that, from our official sources, the IMF, World Bank, that's roughly 4.5 billion. And the major chunk, so $10.5 billion is money that we should be getting from the external debt restructuring. Now, the problem why I think the government is trying to push for a second round of the domestic debt exchange is that in this year alone, they need to have raised 2.5 billion. So that's the number I've highlighted there, 2.482 billion from debt relief from the external front, right? But we are already in end of September, going into October, November, and there are no indications as yet that that will be coming through. So basically, if you have rigidities on this external debt restructuring front, then something must give. And what may give is the domestic side, where there's like a second round of debt exchange. In my view, it is not needed. I think if we cut back on some line items on the expenditure side, and we're much more emphatic on value for money and things, and having a clear case for that, there is no need to impose further hardship on citizens of this country. Because however you slice and dice it, the debt exchange is hit people quite hard. You know, Dr. Duenchi has been on the streets. We've been seeing him on TV the last few weeks, and I'm like, hey, he should be retiring and, you know, enjoying and looking after the grandchildren. But that is not the case. And I don't think it necessarily is fair on other citizens as well in that regard. But that's really what it is, that if there are delays with getting the big relief, this 10.5 or 2.4 billion every year from the external front, then there's the temptation to try and restructure the domestic debt further. And that is even going to impose more hardship on Ghanaians in that regard. Okay. So on the reform side, of course, there are some proposals about amending the Bank of Ghana Act. The point really here is that, in my view, the central bank has become weak, and to an extent even captured by on the fiscal policy side. The IMF's own words, they call it fiscal dominance, but in very simple terms, what it means is that they don't have control necessarily over monetary policy, because it is really the Ministry of Finance and the Treasury that is dictating more or less the response and the things that they need to do. So I think there are some proposals there for reform, and one of it really is, okay, we need very clear guidelines on the conditions under which you can finance the deficit beyond that 5%, how you lift those things, how you lift those conditions, and who you should consult in the process. This is an urgent one that has to be tackled as part of the broader reforms. I've already indicated that, in my view, a second round of debt exchange is not needed. Then there's also the talk about the Financial Stability Fund that was talked about. I don't know how far the government has moved on that, but there's meant to be some additional monies that is meant to provide liquidity and solvency, perhaps maybe when our lady guest also comes, she might maybe make some remark or two on that front. But these are the big elephant things that we need to address, in my view, going forward, right? The tax reforms, the public financial management, the state-owned enterprises, many of them very, very weak. It's a bit sad when you take there's a report published by the Ministry of Finance every year called the State Ownership Report, SOE report. So they take all of the government entities, it's about 150 plus or so of them, and they report on their financials. And if you look at a number of these SOEs, joint ventures, and other entities that the government has some stake or partnership, many of them are hemorrhaging money. They are leaking money. And if we don't address those issues, then they're paying the brunt in the form of haircuts and things, like that. The big one that I want to quickly highlight and try and wrap the conversation up really is on governance, right? I have already indicated that we talk a lot about the economic issues, but we don't put a lot of emphasis on the governance side, which gives cause to the problems that we see. There's an interesting quote from the IMF recent report on Ghana. So this is on paragraph 43 or page 22 of the document. And it says that performance in government effectiveness, regulatory quality, and control of corruption have deteriorated over the last 10 years. This is not me saying it. This is from the IMF's own mouth. And you can also see it with other indicators as well. So largely, if we don't address and fix these issues, we'll be here. We'll have another maybe forum in 5 years' time when we've done our 18th, 19th, and 20th IMF programs and still talking about what, needs to be done. There are some proposals there, one of which really is some new law that they want to introduce. In fact, it's actually not new. The bill has been around for quite a while. It's called the New Conduct of Public Officers Act, and to do with asset declaration and things like that. We're all aware of the famous $1 million case with a minister currently and all of that. But if such a law were there and improved and were working effectively, perhaps it might, also help. The other bit that I think we all don't pay attention to, or maybe again is an elephant or an umbrella in the room that way, is the issue of campaign financing, right? So before the party gets into power, there are companies or individuals or people that, of course, would have supported these campaigns. And we're told by a CDD report that it costs about $300 or $500,000 or so, right, to be able to campaign just MP, right? And for presidential, you're talking multiple millions of dollars. So before the person even becomes president or MP, as we see in Ghana, their hand is in somebody's mouth, right? And therefore, they have to maybe give certain concessions and you name it, and that all ends up, driving or hindering government effectiveness or corruption to the point that now you have to impose the burden on ordinary citizens in the form of haircuts. I mean, this is a big issue, and I think it's one of the things that those of us in civil society, we should try and get some consensus on and push for serious reforms in that area. Last but one or last but two is, of course, on the social side and the social spending. All these reforms, IMF programs, etc., have an impact on the welfare and the well-being of the people. In the recent IMF program, there's at least a commitment to maintaining social spending level at current levels. The problem, though, is that if you look at, say, education, the UNESCO says that you need to spend about 4 to 6% of your GDP every year on education, right? And 6% is about the benchmark. In fact, if you do the analysis, since about 2019 thereabouts, the amount that we're spending is actually come down. As a share of GDP, it's still within the 4 to 6%, but it's the lower end of that. And this means that people staying out of school. It means that desks that are not available. It means that, children perhaps not, completing certain progress benchmarks that, needs to be attained. And I think that's something that, again, from a reform and advocacy point of view, we should be paying attention to and driving a lot of things in there. My last part, 2 or 3 points, and I would try and wrap up. So I've been talking a lot about the politics and what needs to be done to improve it, right? So I think across the political divide or space, most of the parties maybe call it mean well, but the devil is in the details. Okay, so here I've got the 2016 and 2020 manifestos of the two parties. Now observe how the titles actually change, right? So in the 2016 manifesto of the NDC says, changing lives, transforming Ghana, right? In the 2020 manifesto of the NPP, there's leadership of service, protecting our progress, transforming Ghana for all. And then you look at the same thing, 2020 NDC manifesto, NPP manifesto. So the NPP manifesto for 2016 says, change, an agenda for jobs, creating prosperity and equal opportunity for all. Now watch the 2020 NDC manifesto. It says that jobs, prosperity, and more. The People's Manifesto, right? So you may even ask, okay, so who was copying who in that? But the important point here really is that there seems to be some consensus about what needs to be done. The thing is, there are some impediments that block them when they now come into power that prevents them from doing what needs to be done. And of course, that's also to say that even when you look at the manifestos itself, some of them are not necessarily connected to even broader national level development, outcomes. So let me quickly show you what I mean by that, right? Okay. So we've actually got a medium-term policy framework in Ghana. There's no long-term national development plan, but at least the NDPC has a document. It's a big document, over 340 pages, and it's publicly available, called the National Medium-Term Development Policy Framework. And this is a very, very interesting document, but it shows you what Ghana should be doing or aspiring to at least over the next 3-4 years. It's something that's done consistently. And then also there are indicators in this document that shows you baseline. So where are we starting from? Where do we want to go? How do you measure? And all of that. If you take any of the party manifestos and you do a deep analysis and contrast it with either this document or go back to prior documents, Ghana, GSDD, we've had GPRS 1 and 2 and all of that, you see a big disconnect between what they say they want to do as parties and what Ghanaians also say they want as framed in this national development document. And again, I think it's quite important, because for me, the thing then is that every policy going forward, if we don't want a recurrence of the haircuts and the economic crisis and all of that, going back to the tax and spend, every policy going forward must be subjected to rigorous peer review, and we need to establish the evidence base and make a business case for it. Let me quickly explain on this. In the UK, where I shuffle between, any government proposal or document has two key things. There's what they call the logic framework. And the logic framework basically shows how you're going to move from inputs to counting outputs and counting outcomes. So let me explain. In Ghana, a politician may come and say, oh, but I've done the road in the village, right? Or I've built some school here. But the question is, if you went back 3-4 years, has that necessarily improved either productivity or learning outcomes or education outcomes and all of that, right? So a lot of our politics, you see that the emphasis is on inputs, especially in election year. So, all of that. But it's not really driven or connected to a broader development point. If you look at this document that the NDPC has, there are very clear benchmarks to connect all that you're doing at an activity level to counting, outcomes and overall impact. So we need to improve on that. And also, you need to have had a business case. So it's not just a logic framework, but a clear business case that is subject to rigorous review. We were here, we had things like 1D, 1F, and other of these major government flagship policy initiatives. But where is the evidence base underpinning those initiatives? And what sort of learnings have we taken from them to sort of improve them? And I think this is something that is very, very, very important if we are trying to address the root cause issues going forward, because the level of this would be able to constrain some of the excessive partisanship that we have seen across many of our institutions in the country. So in trying to wrap up the conversation here, and also some ideas for reforms that I have highlighted, including the opportunities. I mean, I think I should have touched on that. It's not all lost. I mean, we know that Ghana has tremendous opportunities, and this government document actually highlights some of the priority sectors that needs investment. But these investments cannot happen in a vacuum when we're just wasting and throwing money about. And the very citizens that you also need money from to be able to finance some of these programs, you're giving them haircuts as well. So in trying to wrap up, I think that, yes, there is some truth in the fact that both the pandemic and Russia-Ukraine war fundamentally have exposed major weaknesses in our economy. So we've been talking about diversification, structural transformation from the 1980s, and I'm sure Uncle Rekubobe would have done even a lot of work on that way back then, but it hasn't happened. And a part of the reason is that it goes back to this political economy cycle of borrowing and spending, especially around elections. And I think the analysis also shows that over the medium term, you're going to have a constrained fiscal space. So you have to prioritize on the areas that you need to spend your monies on. There are also opportunities, of course, for increasing and improving revenue flows, such as with property taxes. And in property taxes, you can see in the case of South Africa, almost 6% of their revenue base is actually coming from these property tax, handles, and that's what we need to do to try and lessen more on the direct ad valorem type taxes and more of individual taxes and other tax forms that would also deepen social accountability. I mean, in terms of the budget itself and the budget financing, the point here is that we need to start interrogating and pushing our political class and politicians to move from counting inputs like doing a road or a hospital to now thinking about outcomes. How is this improving or reducing poverty? How is this addressing inequality? And all of those things, very, very important. And then public procurement is one of the things that we have to significantly address as well. As for opportunities, Ghana has always had opportunities. The problem is that we start, make progress, and then we go back. And not until, in my view, we address the root causes, we will still be here talking about the same thing. So thank you very much, and I hope I have been within time. If not, please forgive me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Theo Acheampong. I think it's only fitting, even on social media, people were lauding you for your very lucid thoughts and the wonderful presentation. Please, let's do it for our speaker one more time. We're still live on Joy News Television on Joy 99.7 FM. If you've joined us, it is the Ban Redu Memorial Lecture, and our main speaker just shared his thoughts with us, Dr. Theo Acheampong, an economist and political risk analyst. Before I segue into our next conversation, where we are going to be hearing from our second speaker, who also is with Daylex Finance, just a brief recap of some of what Dr. Acheampong mentioned, and also to avert our minds to a document that many people apparently have not seen. Ghana at 100. You ended by speaking about the NDPC, National Development Planning Commission. We all should look at that document, because I'll just cite three things from some pages in that document, 11, 27, and I think 29, about the Ghana we want, about what other countries are doing by way of development plans, and our projections, economically speaking, and where we find ourselves, and whether it is anything to write home about. But Dr. Acheampong did make mention of one thing. Our leaders, from where I sit, clearly know what must be done. How to do it, I suppose, is the problem. He spoke about the revenue expenditure gap, and the fact that politics is manifesting in our economy. And so with that, it has hobbled the central bank. And once politics comes in, level heads will not prevail. He made mention of the fact that a second DDEP is not needed, and that our penchant for loans, citing the Eurobond market and so on, will keep us marking time. If we don't get a grip on our economy, we may come back here just a few years down the road talking about these same matters, recycling the same matters. It means as a country, we're not moving forward. And that very troubling matter of campaign financing, that's one maybe Jesus will have to come down and help us with it. But just to stick to my promise, I made mention of these three things that I would bring forward before I introduce the next speaker. If you look at the Ghana at 100 document, which has been put out collaboratively over the years through the different administrations with input from different regimes and put out by the NDPC itself. When you go to point 1.2, justification for a long-term development framework, we all remember Senior Minister Osafo Maafo and what he said about a 40-year development plan. Examples of countries with long-term frameworks: Algeria, National Vision 2030. Bahamas, Vision 2040. Kenya, Vision 2030. Malaysia, Vision 2020, Wasawan 2020. New Zealand, 30-year infrastructural plan. Qatar, Vision 2030. Saudi Arabia, Vision 2030. South Africa, 2030. South Korea, 2030. Uganda, Vision 2040. Where are we? What is ours? he pointed to something between 2022 and 2025. What is our long-term framework for Ghana? And then you go to the very next point, which I'll get to very quickly so we can proceed from here. In terms of the Ghana we all want to see. I'll get there shortly. There are a number of pages. I'm almost there now. Good. So it says vision. The vision of Ghana at 100, and by the way, that would be 2057, 1957 to 2057, is to achieve a democratic, inclusive, self-reliant, developed country by 2057. Are we democratic? Depends on what you're looking at. Inclusive? As for self-reliant, developed country by 2057, may God get us there. With our work, of course. But if you consider, this is what I'll leave you with. If you look at the portrait of Ghana at 100, so many things are lined up. One of them that caught my attention, and later Doc and Dr. Chairman, maybe you can share with me. It says for point 2, by 2057, it is envisioned that Ghana will be a high-income country with the following minimum characteristics. And the only one I'm highlighting, point 2, with a nominal GDP, nominal, of course, of approximately $3.4 trillion. Where are we now? Around 70 plus billion. $3.4 trillion. We're in 2023, so that's what? 30 years more. So some 34 years from now, that's what we're aiming at. A nominal GDP of approximately $3.4 trillion and per capita GDP of not less than $50,000 equivalent. I'll leave it to, he's reminded me that we're at 3,000. So we have another what? How much to go? I'll leave it to the speakers later to elaborate on that. So we'll move on now to some commentary. And we're going to have from Daylex Finance, a senior investment manager, Agnes Sewa Abankwa. Please, let's put our hands together as we welcome her. Please, let's keep clapping till she gets here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Theo Echampong, that was an insightful presentation. I was taking notes the whole time, so thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Roeku Brobe, thank you. Thank you to the Ghana Institute of Public Policy Options and the Multimedia Group for this opportunity to share my thoughts on the haircut prospects for investment in Ghana in the next decade. My name is Agnes Sewa Abankwa, and I've been in the investment space over the past 14 years. I've been instrumental in funds mobilization and maintaining clients' portfolio during this period. So I've been here a little bit. I've seen the good, I've seen the bad in the financial sector. I can be reached on the number on the screen if you need any form of financial advice. I'll be speaking briefly on the haircut effect. I'll try and estimate what's going to happen in the next decade and what we can do to accelerate recovery. I'd like to share a story. So at the beginning of this year, a good friend of mine, Cecil, lost his mother. And we had a long discussion about loss and, how it's part of life. It was a pretty long one. At the end of the discussion, Cecil says, Agnes, can you lend me 10,000 cedis? January, 10,000 cedis. I didn't have that kind of money then. And the only 10,000 I had was something I had set aside for the children's school fees. And so it wasn't something I could easily give out. And he said, oh, don't worry, I'll pay. It's a bridge loan. Just give me, right after the funeral, I'll give you your 11,000. Oh, I'll give it to you. Reluctantly, I gave the money to Cecil. We went to the funeral. It was actually in Kumasi. Cecil is my good friend. He's also my senior colleague in the office. So we went to support him in Kumasi. When I got to the funeral grounds, big funeral, tents, canopies, food, there's buffet here, there's cocktail, there's sobolo stand. Hey! I was like, wow. So we sat there, I looked from across, and then I saw another canopy with some dignitaries walking and giving donations. You know, when the donations was going on, all I was thinking about was my 11,000. So I kept saying, hey, misikano, misikano, misikana na abano. Saturday passed, Sunday, we went for the Thanksgiving service. After the service, they said, let's meet at the family house. When I got to the family house, another big tent, food, fufu here, banku, hey. I was thinking it was going to be a very moderate, for someone who's asking me to lend you 10,000. I was expecting a small. So my colleagues and I were, oh, Cecil, oh, this is a nice one. And then we came back to Accra because of work. Cecil resumes work on Thursday, and we are all commending him. Oh, Cecil, we see you, mommy, oh, why are dear the funeral? All I was thinking about was my money. So when everybody left, I walked up to him. I was like, Charlie, 11K and how far? Are you paying it into my account or Momo? All of a sudden, my friend starts fumbling. Agi eyeno. Sawana mba crowd. Sawana mba. Look at the buses we rented from Accra to Kumasi. Look at the event planner, how much we paid. Look at all of this. And people came giving donations as low as 100 cedis, 200 cedis. Sister, ya boka. So you know what? Instead of paying you at the end of the month, let me pay you in December. You know, in December we'll get bonuses, so I'll pay. And then I promised you an interest of 10%. I was supposed to give you 11K. Can we make it 500 instead? Ladies and gentlemen, you can imagine my sense of outrage. What does this guy want to tell me? You know, this is money for my fees. And we all know that usually in January, when school reopens, latest by the end of the month, the schools want you to pay. And I didn't even inform my husband about this money. What is this guy telling me? How do I pay my children's school fees? And this is my good friend and also my senior colleague. So I couldn't really express myself the way I wanted to. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what the government of Ghana has done with the introduction of the domestic debt exchange program. It has affected the financial sector and it has devastated it. As we all know, there's a link between the government and the finance sector. And so the moment the government fails in paying any of its obligations to the finance sector, it puts the whole system in disarray. And this comes with compounding effects. One of those effects is liquidity. Just like we all need blood to live, liquidity for every organization is key. That is what the organization needs to run smoothly. And so the moment a financial institution is not liquid, then we are headed for trouble. I'll give you a realistic example. In 2018, Dalex Finance issued some bonds, some corporate bonds. And these bonds were meant to mature in 2023. As part of our strategic measures, we decided that we'll set aside a sinking fund by investing in some GOG bonds, so that immediately in 2023, we can pay off our bondholders. Then in 2023, haircut. So for the period of January, February, March, we had to suspend lending. We couldn't lend. Just so to maintain our corporate image. We couldn't lend. And for every financial institution, your core mandate is to buy idle funds from individuals and sell. That is how you make profit. And so if you do not have that funds available, it means that you are headed for trouble. And if you are not liquid, your valuation is low. Who would want to invest in an organization with low value? Nobody will be interested. And adversely, if your liquidity is low, you can't make any profits. I'll quickly talk about the other effects that this domestic debt exchange program, or the haircut, has had on the financial sector. Individuals no longer have confidence in the financial sector. Let me take you back to 2017 when we had the cleanup exercise. You notice that individuals who had forex were not affected. Individuals who invested in real estate or in the real sector were not affected. It was only individuals who had their funds in financial institutions that were affected, so their monies were locked up. Then in 2023, we're talking about haircuts. If you have forex, you're cool. If you invest in the real sector, if you have real estate or you are a real estate owner, you're fine. But individuals who invested in financial assets through financial organizations, who bought sovereign debts, are the ones who are affected. And so all of a sudden, the person is thinking, why should I invest in a financial institution? Why don't I also buy dollars and stash it under my bed? And we all know the effects when there's pressure on the dollar. The cedi depreciates the more. If your valuation is low, like I said earlier, access to foreign markets becomes difficult. If you go to a poultry farm and there are layers, and the owner says that this layer can give you 10 eggs in a day, this one can give you 1 layer in a day, which one would you go for? You would go for the one that gives you 10. And so if your valuation is low, how then do you go even to the external market and go and borrow? We talk about the fact that the private sector is the engine of growth. And I spoke about the Dalex example. If you're not lending to the private sector, they want loan, and their loan applications are denied. How do they employ more people? How do they employ more people? How do we get the economy running? And so I talked in the beginning, I talked about the compounding effect. It affects everybody. And that is where we are now. I want to be brief, and so I'll talk about, in my estimation, what is going to happen in the next decade. In the next 10 years, I've categorized them into 3 phases. The survival phase, which will take about 2 years. The consolidation and recapitalization stage, which will take about 4 years. And then hopefully, we'll be looking at recovery. In the next 2 years, there's going to be a lot of write-offs. In 2023 actually, when you look at most or all of the bank's financial statements, you realize that they recorded huge losses. And it is as a result of the DDEP. So if we want to move forward, we'll need to look at write-offs. Most of these monies will need to be written off in order for the financial sector to gain some form of stability, be back on its feet, augment its capital, and then the economy can run smoothly. Dr. Champon talked about the stabilization fund. It's some fund that the government sets aside for stressed institutions. I heard about the stabilization fund in 2022, and yet still nothing has been done. The money should be up and running now to support these struggling institutions. We don't have to do it the Ghanaian way. When we're going for committee meetings, we're doing this. No, the money should be there so that distressed institutions can have access to that money and loan and give out more loans. Because for financial sectors, that is how we thrive. That is how we make money. And when I look at the survival stage, I compare it to a wounded lion. When a lion is wounded and it's able to get back on its feet, it becomes very aggressive. And so in the next 4 years, we need to be aggressive. Institutions that are struggling probably might experience takeovers. There'll be some consolidation of some banks. And we also need to look at recapitalization. Bank of Ghana gave a minimum capital requirement for every financial institution. Last year, the cedi to the dollar was 6 cedis to the dollar. This year, it's almost double. And so what it means is that your minimum capital requirement, whatever money you have as your working capital, has been halved. So the value is low. So we need to look at recapitalization. Once we are able to do this, hopefully in the other 4 years, we'll be looking at recovery. And mind you, this recovery is going to be a painful process. We saw the figures and the numbers that Dr. Champon gave us. It's going to be slow and it's going to be painful. How do we accelerate this recovery? I love this quote by Sanchu. And he says that in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. It looks very bad. We've spoken about a lot of things. But I think that there is still hope. So what do we have to do? I'll talk about the Stability Fund once again. The government of Ghana needs to make the Stability Fund available. And earlier on, I said that access to foreign funds is going to be difficult because foreign people are looking at the fact that you're not making profits. Why should I invest in you? But I think that the financial sector can leverage on a few things. Yes, things are not that good, but Ghana is still a fertile ground for investment. We have other indicators that are working for us. We are peaceful, we have a working judiciary, and we have a stable democracy. And so I believe that these institutions can leverage on that and look to foreign investors for funds, because we would need that to stabilize the economy. Finally, I'll talk about the non-bank cleanup, which happened in 2017. I know that the Bank of Ghana says that the cleanup has been done. But I believe that there are some debts in the corners of that room that needs to be worked on. There are people who still have locked up funds from some institutions, and then they haven't received those monies up till date. So if we want to make progress, we should be looking at that. We have to look at our spending. Dr. Champon talked about spending more on the government side, but I'll talk about it from the financial side. This is not the time for financial institutions to be flamboyant. You need to check your processes and align your cost and your revenue. And I'm hoping that if we're able to put all these things in place, we will definitely survive. We will recover, and as we always say, this too shall pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that powerful presentation. Insightful what you've shared with us this afternoon. In case you just tuned in, well, you're catching at least some part of the 2023 Banredu Memorial Lecture. Today, the topic, the theme, which has been delivered on by Dr. Theo Champong, economist and political risk analyst, beyond the haircut haircut or record. Beyond the haircut, the prospects for investment and public finances in Ghana in the next decade. A short while ago, we also heard Agnes Sewa Bankwa, Senior Investment Manager at Daylex Finance. I'll corroborate what you said, Sewa. You said something, and so you are not aware. Sometime, was it late last year or very early this year, a friend reached out to me and said she needed a loan. There was a family thing going on. I don't think it was a funeral, though. And she needed a certain amount of money. I didn't have that kind of money. I don't have that kind of money. So, looking at the rates of different banks and everything going on, I decided to reach out to Daylex Finance, my own uncle, Joe Jackson. And I said to him, oh, Senior, someone else needs a loan, and this is can you help? Say, well, what you told us, you are not even able to give out any money because you must have that liquid support from other people's money, so to speak, to be able to lend. They were not able to help my friend. So what you said is a reality that I have witnessed because I didn't have the money, and even they, whose top priority is to do that, could not afford to do it. At this juncture, I would also like us to hear from the chairperson, Dr. Edu Anani Entry. He's been calmly following proceedings here, taking notes, copious notes. I've watched him throughout, and I think he's also about to deliver quite a lot on this matter. Please, let's welcome him.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. As you said, I have a lot, but we don't have the time. If it's my day that I'm speaking, then I can cover all these areas. But I will not attempt to summarize what has been said. I'll just use some few minutes to look at the going forward. That is how to get investors back to the market. Dealers, the experience you had, they didn't have the money. They will not have because people will not bring the money. You see, people, sometimes I wonder when people, they are thinking of financial market is only banking. So they say the banking, they are making returns, they are coming back. The banks are not there for investors to put their funds. They are there for deposits, just savings and savings account and what? Current account. The institutions that are built to take investors' funds, proper investment, are the finance houses, the mutual funds, the unit trusts. They are the ones that are taking the money as investors' funds. The banks, I always tell my students that traditionally banks are supposed to take deposits and lend. That's all. Deposit and lend. But now they have brought all other businesses on themselves. But the very institutions that have been established to take investors' fund, investment, are the investment houses. And nobody is going there because people now fear to invest. The banks will be doing well a little because for the banks, they will always get the money coming in. Your salary will go there. When people are paying you for services, they will send a check for you. So they will have the resources always coming in. So they are not a good gauge of the financial market stability and all that. And that is why anytime I get the opportunity to talk to them, I say, you don't think that banking stability is equal to financial market stability. No. Your bank system can be stable, but yet still the financial market is unstable because the banks, the regular will come. When we were going to start, I have an article written years back, I think in the 80s, where we were going to attempt to start paying salaries into the bank. I wrote an article that now that we are going to start paying salaries into the bank should ensure that when people come there, they will service them rightly. Those years, I think it was early 80s, when we started paying salaries through the bank. It became compulsory. So your salary will always pass through the bank. So they will have it. If it's for 15 days, at least they have it, and they can also use it as part of. If they are measuring their growth, they measure their growth by the deposits they have gotten during a period. Whether it stayed there for a day or 1 hour, It is part of what? The deposit they have mobilized. And you are using this to gauge the whole financial sector stability. No, it is wrong. We must ensure that the whole market is stable. And this market will not be stable when these issues are still there. When we did a cleanup exercise, the first one, people who had to get their money from the same finance investment houses, they were first issued, they were giving them 50,000. And the rest, government issued 5-year zero coupon bonds to them. 5-year zero coupon bond. My own money is in the financial market. You say you will repay me, and you are going to repay me over 5 years, and you won't pay interest, and you are not able to stop inflation for me. Then I'm losing a whole value. And the next time you want me to bring my money back to these institutions, no. I'll think twice. Then something happens, whether it was to please people, we got paid. Everybody sang hallelujah. And you took your money. That money, people realize that, look, this money, if I take it and I go back to another finance house, I will be like, sorry to say, a fool that I've gone back. So let me go to what? The government, who is the larger person, who we say is less risky. Let me put my money there. So we cross that, and people send their money to the government. There were people who didn't even get anything. They got 50,000, and they have been told to go to some AM fund at Bank of Ghana, government, GBC. So people don't even have proper records of what they have there. It is sad. It was only some text messages that were sent to people to tell them that this is what you have here. That is not how we run even a mutual fund. And if you are running a mutual fund, the law of mutual funds states that you must periodically submit statement of accounts to your investors. Are they doing that? No. People even don't know how much they have there because no record. If you send text message is not a permanent file. It can get deleted at any time. Even if you make sure you are keeping it unintentionally, you can press somewhere and it is deleted. How can investors have confidence when even their money that is locked up, they don't even have proper records on that? If you have proper records on that, at least you could even go to some place and say, please, my money is at AM Capital. Give me something. You are a patient lender. You can wait until something happens and I bring you. But this you don't even have anything. Is that how we want to run our financial market? No, it is wrong. And people's money has been locked up. They are not getting it. Then again, there are people who are still working. Their licenses have not been revoked. They are working. And we know they are working, but they cannot pay their depositors either interest or principal when it's due. And we are sitting just watching them. And I keep on saying, as if Bank of Ghana doesn't care that you put your money there. I don't think the regulators will behave like that. That look, you should have done your research and review and whatever. We went to a place where you have told them to conspicuously display their certificate so that when you get there, you know that, yes, I've come to a safe place. If not the safest, at least it is safer than going to where they don't have the license. And you think the regulator, you don't have any responsibility towards these people. And for 4 years, people cannot access their funds from companies that are still operating. They said they needed some support, liquidity support. You say your law doesn't allow them. And I say, were the investors the people who crafted your law? If you are managing a financial institution and you are bringing out a law, you don't think you should do proper law that will allow you to manage these institutions? We say, just give them support so that they can also give us our money. And we say, if Bank of Ghana think that these institutions, they no longer have any economic benefits. And let me tell you, the person selling on the tabletop he doesn't go to a commercial house, a commercial bank for loan. It is these people who give them the loans. You don't have accounts. No bank, no solid bank will give you money where you don't have accounts. They will say we deal with companies, and for those of us who have sat on finance committees of banks, before a loan is given, we go through what is this company. Does he have this account? Does he have this? Does he have that? You don't have, and then you tabletop person, you come and say we should give you loan. You must go. That is why we created these people, so that this one, like the informal, we can call it informal, people can still go there and get. They now, if you think they don't have any economic value, then we are saying revoke their licenses and assume their liability and pay us. We are not the cause of their problems. If they have not run the place well, we are not their class teachers. The headmaster is the regulator. You should have sanctioned them. You should have put in measures that will not allow them to do what they have done. Deal with them when you have given us our money, close them down, pay us, and find a way to redeem yourself by also suing the operators. If you have to sell their property, sell. If they have to go to jail, let them go. If they are found to have committed any crime with investors' funds. But it is not for us to be chasing these people that you advise us to invest with. And some of us has preached investment, investor education, educating people, invest. And now you invest.
Hello, my name is Abeku Agri Santana. If there's anything that makes my life so easy, it is my bank. I love hanging out with my boys at our usual fufu joint. But even without cash, we still dey chop better with EcoBank Mobile. No matter the time of day, my bank helps me stay in touch with my beautiful wife whenever she's away. And when my beautiful wife is in town, she never misses out on her favorite TV shows because I'm able to pay up all my TV subscriptions from the comfort of my mobile phone. Whenever she has to get groceries too, my bank makes it cashless and convenient. And the part my wife loves the most is when my bank makes it possible and easy for her to shop from any part of the world without moving.
Welcome to the smart world of EcoBank. Download EcoBank Mobile from Google Play Store or the App Store and discover the smart way to bank. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
Smile, Look lively, okay? Smile, smile. Is the money too small? A bad stomach ruins your day. Don't let it. Take Gastron, your most effective antacid for the relief of symptoms of peptic ulcer, heartburn, gas pain, flatulence, and indigestion.
Hey guys, what are you waiting for? Let's go.
Mwah. Can you bring down the smiles more? Gastron, effective relief from stomach discomfort. Manufactured and distributed by NS Chemist Limited. This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Daddy, this tank is big.
Yes, that's true.
It can store a lot of water.
That's so true.
Wow, it has a working tortoise on it.
That's so true.
I can see Sintex. Sintex.
That is so true, my daughter.
When it falls down, it will spoil.
That's not true.
But why?
Hey! Sintex was the first to introduce double-layer tanks in Ghana. Sintex again was the first to introduce white inner layers in Ghana. Sintex gives you the biggest warranty, 7 years. No matter your water needs, Sintex is the answer. Sintex tank. Are you strong? Are you tough?
voters registration exercise 2023 is here with us now.
The Electoral Commission is making preparations for voters registration exercise from 12 September to 2nd October 2023 to enable citizens who have turned 18 years or persons who have not previously registered to visit the EC office in their district and register as a voter ahead of the upcoming district level elections 2023. The registration exercise is in line with the Commission's mandate to compile the register of voters and revise it at such periods as may be determined by law. Every eligible Ghanaian should visit the EC office in their district and present their Ghana card or passport for inclusion in the voters register. Applicants who do not have a Ghana card or passport are required to bring 2 persons who are already registered voters to guarantee their registration. Do not register again if you have lost your voter ID card. Replacement of voter ID cards will start from 3rd October 2023 after the registration exercise. Transfer of votes will also be done from 3rd October to 9th October 2023. It is a criminal offense for a guarantor to guarantee for more than 10 people, non-Ghanaians and persons who are not 18 years of age. Guarantors who violate this provision will be prosecuted. The voters' registration exercise is part of efforts to ensure credible, transparent, and peaceful elections in Ghana. Register to vote. Your vote is your power.
The voters registration exercise 2023 is here with us now.
So I came home earlier than I normally would that fateful Monday after work. And to my surprise, I saw my husband and my mother having sex in our living room.
I had always suspected my wife. I felt she had something doing with my little brother. And I walked into a room one day, and there they were, making out. And this is my blood brother.
My husband, who is a banker, will not have sex with me because I denied him my earnings. Is he gay? I've been wondering.
What is your story? What secret is eating you up? Why are you having continual sleepless nights? Do you need help? Share your story on our powerful new series where real people share their deepest secrets on Prime Morning beginning this September. Drop your stories on our WhatsApp number 055 157 5757. Remember, a problem shared is a problem half solved, and every problem has a solution.
Football season is here, and it's best seen on HD Plus in 5 times crystal clear images. See the new signings, jerseys, silky skills, and great goals. Catch the DFB Pokal, J1 League, and the Argentina Copa de la Liga Profesional on Score HD channel 151. The best of African football on JTV Sports Plus channel 150. World football is best seen Philly on HD Plus. Grab a decoder and subscribe for 3 months at 85 Ghana cedis per HD Plus. See it feel.
We'll continue our conversation on the legacy of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the man who is hailed globally. But as you may be aware, there are those who are also quite critical of some of his ideologies and, like they say, what he ended up becoming. And I'll say that because in my conversation with Sekou and Samia, who are children of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, by the way, if you're not aware, Sekou believes that yes, his father started off with something, but ended up, as he went along, for him, seeing what fit best at the time. And so the concerns about the one-party state, their concerns about whether or not he was democratic or autocratic, There are concerns about whether he allowed other people to share their views. Samia thinks that, look, he wasn't autocratic because everything went through Parliament. But Sekou says, yeah, Parliament, that was majority of his party. It ends up being the same way, and he didn't allow others to participate. But for you, as the CPP, it's been a struggle for you since Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown. You just referenced how you had, at a point, had to join the National Democratic Congress, and you believe that that was where your woes started, losing the base and the support that you had. But there's also an interesting point about whether or not the CPP is truly independent. Do you still hold ties to the NDC?
You mean as in policy or as in...
As a party. As a party, do you still have ties with the NDC?
As a party, we have ties with government. We have ties with NPP, NDC, and Ghanaian. I mean, that question is one of the very things that people use to ensure that members do not join the party. So that's why, honestly speaking, as a woman, and when you are a woman, there's something that you can connect with that the other people might not. And what do I mean? It is very easy to just live on our past glory and forget the fact that young people might not necessarily understand or even connect with us. And that is why we are just at the grassroots working to get our organizers at the base. And let me tell you, you see what Sekou was saying. If you listen to Sekou very well, then now I understand where he's coming from. Because he read the things that were critical of his father before he even actually read his father's own version. So for that reason, he might have grown up thinking that the things, one of the very things that people have said, that he was thinking of a one-party state. Today, what is wrong? Do you know that after Nkrumah, my father was part of a champion as well? Do you know after Nkrumah, we had what we called the same concept was proposed by Champion. Do you know that? Unigov. Unigov is a union government, a government where we all become one to fight one, have an agenda for the nation, and be able to follow that agenda and make sure. That doesn't mean that you become a head of state for life. What it simply means is that because of where we are standing and the fact that the colonial invaders had a plan, we need to come together. And clearly, the world has shown that all other countries that actually follow that path, that we today, Singapore, man, everywhere that we think that they have done magic, even China, is because they've stayed there for that long. Because they had policies that they followed. It is not because we practice democracy that we don't understand. Osagyefo, yes, everything that he believed in, people believed in it, and people were in parliament as a result of voting. They voted for him. So if you realize that most of his ideals at that time were being implemented, and you think it's because you on the opposition did not have any majority, and you have so much minority, and you are criticizing it on the negative side that the person had too much power. Where is power? It's the same thing that we CPP feel. We think that today should have been the day for the Founders' Day. But look at what we are experiencing today. Today, which is the day that there is no doubt that Osagyefo is the founder of Ghana. There is no doubt that the party that led Osagyefo for you and I to have his legacy discussed is CPP. I mean, these kind of jokes are the very reason why Ghana can't move forward and we have where we are. Because we have Hellenized Osagyefo. All we are doing is talking about Osagyefo, forgetting that Osagyefo is as a result of a government. Osagyefo is as a result of a people that did what was right with his vision. When our father, the current president, came in and put his presidency on the line and said that if he does not fight Galamsey, he would give up his presidency. Today, you and I know that Galamsey is even worse than he took it over. Simply, you know why? Because in as much as he had a vision, he didn't have the people in his government that would support him to do what was right. So Galamsey is worse. However, Osagyefo had a vision, yet he had people like the producers, like the Botswolds, like the Bedemites, like all these people that were able to support him, like the Sapon Kumankumens that worked so hard as young people that believed in his vision and made Ghana work. And when the colonial invaders realized where Ghana was going, that we were able to have over all these factories that we did, they realized that in that part, the reason for which the colonial master came to Ghana and the invaders came to this country must be clearly understood. It is not that they were bringing money to make Ghana work. It is because Ghana had something that they needed. So when they came in here, after the coup, after the independence, Osagyefo clearly knew that after political independence, the only thing that makes sense is economic independence. That was what was promised the youth of Ghana. Yeah. So for that reason, we accelerated the growth by focusing on the very things that would make it happen. That means the states must be rich, the states must have the resources. So most factories, we had Ghana, every factory that we had in this country was a state-owned industry to ensure that the Ghanaian had jobs, had accommodation, had everything that was necessary. But what happened? In the process, the Ghanaian ended up today with the Ghana we have today when the colonial invaders realized that if they did not send us out, if they did not vilify Osagyefo at that time, put the fear in his followers and criminalize the party and ban the party and make sure that nobody mentioned the name CPP and let everybody go into hiding. If they didn't do that, the legacy would have continued and Ghana today would have been a different story. But because they did that, all the factories producing the food that you and I consume, the clothes, the TV, radio, everything, matches, toothpick, everything, even the jute, the thing that really gets to me today is that cocoa is still one of our main exports of this country. And however, even the jute bag that we put the cocoa in is still imported. Now, my preaching, the truth of the matter is that we can't talk about Osagyefo's legacy and not talk about CPP. The moment you talk about Osagyefo's legacy and leave CPP, we would continue to have this country, and what we would end up doing is having a father that we all love, and yet very soon, even his very name will be vilified. Even the textbooks are changing. Even the place that he's been laid, if there had been some few fight, was going to be changed. Even today, the only reason why that place has been renovated is because of tourism.
So you agree with Sekou that the parties, the government is sending confused signals about who Nkrumah is when they take away Founders Day from his birthday or from him, but still want to honor him with the refurbishment of a memorial park?
They don't have a choice. They didn't have a choice. I can tell you on authority that even when they wanted the plan they had for the memorial park changed because the World Bank insisted on what is happening. I can tell you because, and what Sekou is saying is so true. You know why? What day did they launch the park? Do you remember?
It was sometime in July.
4th July. Do you know 4th July? 4th July is Americans' Independence Day. The day they became a sovereign state for that matter. We had our sovereign state, our Republic Day on the 1st of July, which was a weekend. And within that weekend, they could have done it that weekend. But they did it 3-4 days after. 3 days after.
Could it have been just mere coincidence? Because we're told that they were hard pressed for time to even meet the timeline, and the government had insisted that they try and meet the timeline.
And you really believe coincidence in that matter? When a whole nation, when you are running a nation, you work with such coincidence? When your own republic, you are a sovereign state because somebody fought for you become a republic, a state that gave you that sovereignty. And on the day that you abolish there is no public holiday in Ghana anymore. 1st July has been abolished. It's now a commemorative day. We don't celebrate 1st July. You understand? And then on the 1st July, you leave 1st July, now you come and honor a man who brought the 1st July that you are benefiting from, that you call yourself a president. And you tell me that it's because 2 days interval that you were pressed for time. You know something? Here is the truth. Osagyefo is an ideology. Osagyefo has become more than a human being that is dead. That is why we say that he never dies. And that is why there's a statement that he says, even after his death, the torch that he has lit will never die. And that he's asking us, all of us to continue. Today, you and I are discussing him because when you talk about the African personality, what he embodies, he brought us to remind us of our capabilities, of who we are as human beings, that you and I as a Ghanaian have been brought into this world endowed with a certain attribute that makes us capable of governing ourselves. You were given birth by your mother. I have given birth to my children here in Ghana. And we're supposed to give them the best thing. It means access to education, quality education, access to food, and access to accommodation, and access to quality life, and access to be able to live freely in this country, move to US, move anywhere, and come back with confidence as you an African personality. And that is what is embodied in Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah.
Is the CPP waiting for that person who would probably do the magic for you, bring back the... I know you said you've been working at the grassroots level to try and mobilize the numbers, but we all admit that this man was a man of charisma. Look, you read his books, you read his speeches, and you know that this man had foresight. What we are going through today, he even spoke about. It was as if he's a prophet. I mean, I didn't want to sound religious this morning, but it was as if he had a sense of what was going to happen. And to be honest, you don't get that in everybody. Is the CPP looking for that person? Are you on a search for someone with his charisma and ideals?
This is what the CPP believes, and this is what I believe. That you, as you sit here,
right,
you have what Osagyefo has. Every Ghanaian youth, especially the youth of this country, has what Osagyefo has. The difference, though, is that we need to ignite that in us and continue to live and do what must be done. Osagyefo today is being remembered. I'm sure there are several Osagyefos out there in this country. But the truth is that he got the opportunity because the youth of the country at that time joined force with him to make it happen. They joined force with him to fight him. They joined force with him to fight with him when he was at Bukom, when he was at the Osha Fort. It was the Bukom boys. It was the market women. It was the young boys and girls who we call veranda boys who actually went and fought for him. And when they realized, the colonial invaders realized that there was so much power behind him, they left him. You today, if you have opportunity, I'm sure there's so many things you can do. Let me tell the youth of Ghana, no magic is going to happen until you create the magic. There is magic, but the magic must be created by we the people. So I'm asking every Ghanaian, as you're hearing my voice today, *920*277#. Listen to me again. *920*277#. Whatever you're doing, take time and take that number and dial it. That's all you need to do. You know why? Until you get up, until you write it, it will never be written. Until you get up, it's not going to be done. Osagyefo is in you. Osagyefo is in me. Let's have Osagyefo, by definition, means selfless dedication. Osagyefo, by definition, means putting the welfare of people at the center of every policy you make, so that Segleme will not be sitting there, so that when you think of affordable housing, you will think of the squatters and the majority of the young people who have to pay almost all their salary, a year's salary or 2 years' salary, before they can get 1 year accommodation. That is what Osagyefo is about. So there's not going to be any magic. If you, the youth of this country, do not get up and join the CPP with the spirits that is in you, the Osagyefo spirits, and let's go get these people from that place. We can go and occupy that Jubilee House. You need to go and be in that Jubilee House to be able to make the difference, because you must use the resources of the people to affect the lives of the people.
Right. So, interesting. So there are a few points to address here. When we talk about Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and you talk about all the people who have tried, yourself, the party, Samia herself, she was representing you in Parliament, she lost her seat. I found out from her she was hoping to go back to Parliament. She said yes. I asked her the ticket of the CPP. Now here's the answer she gave me.
I know.
What's the answer?
I know. I wouldn't want to repeat.
She believes that your party is not independent. She believes that, in fact, that whole concept of smaller parties aligning to either the NPP or NDC is actually not a lie. She is Samia. This is Samia. Okay? She belongs to your party. And
she won with our party.
She won on the ticket of your party. And she's the last person you would expect to leave the party her father started. But she doesn't believe it's still what it is. Is Alan Trematin joining your party for election 2024?
Before I answer that, let me say something. You are here in Ghana. I've been in the US and back. If you ask me, United States of America, UK, every place is much better looking than Ghana. So maybe we should close down Ghana. Maybe we should. Or we should have individuals who can also determine that God did not create me and make a mistake. And for that reason, I am going to come back to my country and contribute and do something and make sure that my children and my grandchildren have a better chance. That is a decision you make. CPP, yes, over the years, and I gave you a reason. I told you that before Samia came, CPP in the Fourth Republic joined NDC, and NDC took our steps. Samia had a choice. He had just come to the country. She has a good heart, like the father, but she did not understand the dynamics of the politics that we are seeing. I understand the dynamics of the politics. That is why I'm not saying everything. I'm telling you that we are going to the grassroots to make sure we have the legs, because we have the best stretch table, but there's nobody out there. The human beings there, the moment you do anything, they come out and the whole thing crumples. So unless you get the seats, the legs, nothing is going to happen. Samia won on our ticket. And Samia was one of the best people in Parliament within the area. But did she reign again? No. Do you know why? Because when she stood, NDC people did everything against her and made sure that they brought people in and voted against Samia. You know, is Alan Trematin joining CPP? I have no clue. However, if you ask me, Alan Trematin is a very fine gentleman. CPP is organizing. CPP, by December, I would want you to call me here in December after we have finished with our base organization. And at that point, the story might be a little different.
Does Alan Trematin have plans of joining the CPP? Are you aware of that?
None whatsoever.
Has he spoken to you?
Absolutely not.
Are you aware if he's been speaking to Ivor Greenstreet?
Ivor has told me not. So I have no clue where that information is coming. But here is the truth, though. Alan, as I keep telling you, is a fine gentleman.
Does the CPP want to have Alan Trematin?
Plus more. We want to have Alan Trematin. We want to have Ken Japan if you also feel like he's not being treated properly. We want to have anybody and all the other NDC, even Dr. Dufo. We were expecting that he would come to us, because as long as CPP has the best policies for this country, there is no doubt about that. Next time, I would like to go through the policies with you. It is not by chance that we had over 400 factories within a very short time. It is not by chance that we had Akosombo and we also had the atomic energy, because of vision. Atomic energy was going to be nuclear power, so that today the industrialization would have been able to establish. It is not by chance that we had the agricultural process where we just didn't focus on agriculture, but we also focused on the process of selling. You know that currently, when the minister wanted to make sure that to establish the fact that food was in abundance. He brought food to the ministry to sell at the Ministry of Agriculture. I don't want to mention his name because I don't know, is he still in the race or he's not?
He's still in the race.
Yes, so let me leave it like that because I don't want to be biased. But remember that's what happened. We already have a food distribution system in this country. There was already a food and processing distribution system. We had all the gig-work factories that were processing food. NPP has the policy called, what do you call it? Free trade, no, not just a free trade, private sector being the engine of growth. It sounds brilliant on paper, okay? Because when you work everywhere, everybody's in some kind of trading. But private sector, if you need to do something, your parents are poor and they can't help you, and they are living on borrowed money, would you be able to get the money to even go to the university? Would you be able to set up the business you want to set up? So the country itself must have some wealth like China and other places that we see so that our private sector can work. So when they did the 1D, 1F, I'm telling them today why it seemed to have failed and owned by the Chinese and other companies is because Ghana itself is on borrowed money. Ghana does not have money to give its own citizens to be able to support them to own the factories. So if you open your doors to free trade, liberal trading, and you think you are being liberal and you are asking everybody to come in because you are a neoliberal policy, we believe that the state itself must have some role. That means that our gold, our oil must be properly negotiated so that we have a higher percentage of it. We must own at least 60% more of our own gold. We must own 60% more of our oil. Otherwise, we leave it there. We must leave it there to rot because it only becomes better anyway. So what we have today, my dear, is a country that has no direction. It's a country with visionless leadership.
Finally, we've got just about a minute to go, but finally, what is the CPP doing to preserve the legacy of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah? And I'm saying this because you see you're reaching to the grassroots, the young people, the youth, but how practically are you keeping his legacies? We've just spoken about his ideas which transcend his generation. How are you hoping to keep that alive?
We are hoping two things. We are hoping, first of all, to keep it alive by taking over power. Okay. And that is why, for me, because there's nothing else. We are not a fraternity just to have Osagyefo celebrated every year. Osagyefo will not be happy in his grave until the day Ghana becomes the vision. The Ghana of today is the Ghana of the colonial invaders' vision, where we focus and deal and buy everything foreign and do not produce anything local. We cannot make it. Our dollar will not work. We'll be going to IMF. It's a simple thing. Today, as I'm talking to you, we are going to Nkrofo. When we get in Nkrofo, we are hoping that at least 1 million people would be going to Nkrofo every year for pilgrimage. That is the legacy, the things that CPP is looking at. So that if we are not celebrating him as a founder, we will see the effects of his legacy by going to Nkrofo. Nkrofo's hotel should be full. Every hotel around that vicinity should always be full. You and your children should desire that one place that you must go before you become an adult is that you must go and see where Osagyefo was born and where Osagyefo died. He's the only person who was born and died, buried in the same place that he was born, the same place that he was given birth to. That's the same place that he was buried.
Until he was brought back to Accra.
I mean, yes, but that's where I'm sure, I don't know whether they brought the face and left the body. They don't even know what was brought here. But at least that's where it is today. Yeah. So the truth here is this. The legacy of Osagyefo is for Ghana to work. It's for you to believe in yourself. It's for you to be able to have that African personality. It's for you to be a capable person. And when you talk about capability, it means affordable housing, not the confusion. It means that being able to have quality education. It means that, oh my God, it means that not our young people running down a street in the scorching sun, having to walk to Libya, now they can't go there, going into capsizing boats and dying. That is not the vision of Osagyefo. And that was
so
not the
for
vision.
You, the CPP gaining power is how to continue his legacy.
There is nothing else for CPP today but for us to gain power.
I appreciate your time. And I'll touch base with you again in December when you're ready to share with us how you've been able to mobilize.
You will see it.
All right. Thank you. That's Nana Frimpong. She's chairperson of the Convention's People's Party. the Osadefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's party. And if you know the history of Ghana very well, you know much about that party and how it was formed and all the things they had to suffer after Osadefo was overthrown. It's our way of, you know, having a conversation about who the man was and how his legacy can be kept alive as we commemorate his birthday today.